Hello, everyone. Welcome to my dining room. My lair is currently being used for storage. It's one of the many reasons why I haven't been posting anything. So sorry about that. It's a busy time of the year for us professors. We are grading a bunch of stuff, and probably I should be grading right now. But I wanted to do this one, so following me on this, I actually wanted to do a video about how dumb professors can be sometimes. And I was going to illustrate that through a video about how professors talk about women in ancient Greece, or how they've been written about. But while I was eating breakfast this morning, I watched a friend's video about he does a bunch of Lord of the Rings stuff. I just discovered it actually. Anyway, and he was debunking this article about 10 reasons how Lord of the Rings hasn't aged well. And it was kind of fascinating. I thought it was neat and all of that. Anyway, I was still planning on doing the women in Greece, and in the shower, I was thinking about Hilaire Belloc. If you ever actually take one of my courses, by the way, we do the Hilaire Belloc quote. And the Hilaire Belloc quote is an amazing quote if you're thinking about history, but it's also something to think about anytime you're looking at things in the past. And I'm going to paraphrase it. I'm going to try to quote, but I'll try to paraphrase it. Basically, the Hilaire Belloc quote says, the most important thing in the world in connection with history and the rarest of achievement is the seeing of events as contemporaries saw them rather than seeing them through the distorting medium of our later knowledge. So, this is important when you're looking at history often because, people saw things and understood things and lived in a completely different world. And so that's an important thing to know. So I was thinking about that while, showering. Yes, I do bathe. And I was also thinking about Hilaire Belloc and how he hung out with folks like G.K. Chesterton and like C.S. Lewis and like J.R.R. Tolkien. And somewhere in there, I something clicked, and I was thinking about the video that my friend had done. I'll put a link in the description to his video because he's a nice guy. And I think like reason number 5 or number 6 why Tolkien, why Lord of the Rings hasn't aged well, was that Tolkien wasn't diverse enough. And I mean, of course, that's got to be something, right? Because nobody's diverse as we are now, and diversity is such a huge thing. And it started to dawn on me, well, yeah, Tolkien was diverse. Or at least we could say that he lived in a very diverse world. I mean, the British Empire that existed when Tolkien was doing his thing was an incredibly diverse place. I mean, it existed across the entire globe, right? And of course, when Tolkien fought in World War One, he had the opportunity to rub shoulders with quite a few different folks. I mean, he might have been fighting right next to some Indians. He might have, seen some Japanese ambulance drivers or pilots, for that matter. There were some in the French Foreign Legion, at least. He might have fought with Africans. I mean, there were a whole bunch of folks on the Western Front who fought in some amazing places. And then, of course, speaking of amazing places, I mean, World War One was a global conflict, and it was fought in the Pacific. It was fought in all over the place over here, right? In the Middle East, in Africa, in Europe, and in all over Europe. So yeah, when we're talking about the world he existed in, it wasn't just a white man's world. It was an incredibly diverse world that he was there. And here's the thing about Lord of the Rings is, I hear this criticism a lot, right? And I mean, especially with that whole Rings of Power garbage that came out, and everybody says, well, now we have black elves and black dwarves, and nobody can say that there aren't any black elves anymore, right? Um, you know, this whole thing that, Lord of the Rings isn't very diverse. A lot of the response that I've heard to that is that he was writing about a world. He created a world that was like medieval Europe, and so yeah, you probably wouldn't have seen a whole lot of diversity in race and that kind of business. Um, and I mean, that's not a bad retort, but my thought here is no, the Lord of the Rings is super diverse, like crazy, hugely diverse. And let's think about this for just a second, right? When we're looking at the Lord of the Rings and we're looking at the actual diversity in the Lord of the Rings, like the real Tolkien Lord of the Rings that you can go pick up a copy at your local bookstore for right now and read, It's incredibly diverse. Look at the races of men that exist there, right? The Numenorians are described as being different than other men, right? The people, the Easterlings, for example, are described as being different than other people, right? And in these different races or groups, if you want to call them whatever, there's different cultures as well. I mean, the people from Rohan have a very different way of life and culture and values and practices than the people of Gondor do. So even in that one group of people, the race of men, we see that there is a huge diversity there. But Tolkien takes it further because he doesn't even go beyond just, race of men, and there's races in the race of men and cultures in those races of men, but he even has like different almost species. I mean, there's elves and dwarves and orcs and trolls and um, hobbits, right? Am I missing any? Geez, there's a ton of different things that are actual sentient beings that can have conversations with you. Even the dragons, for example, right, can talk to you. So these are huge diversities of different peoples that have different ways of looking, who have different backgrounds and different cultures, who have different mores and values, and all sorts of stuff. It's hugely diverse. And each one of those various species or races, whatever you want to call them, have sub-races as well, have subgroups, right? So there are, in fact, different kinds of elves that Tolkien describes. In The Hobbit, he goes to the wood elves, right? And there's the wood elves that are there. There's the elves, I don't know, are the elves from Lothlorien wood elves too? Anyway, there's different kinds of elves. The trolls, right? I mean, trolls aren't really like the big thing, but you occasion them from time to time. Aren't there cave trolls and mountain trolls? You can assume that these are different kinds of trolls and have different kinds of things going on for them. Yeah, there's all kinds of diversity. When you look at the actual cultures, you see it, right? I mean, there's a conversation about I forget if this is in the Two Towers or the Return of the King, but there's a conversation between Faramir and the hobbits and about the customs of what you do before you eat a meal, right? I think they look east or something. I'll have to read the books again. Darn. Oh, I have an excuse to read the books again. So yeah, you see there's huge amounts of cultural differentiation and all sorts of stuff. And again, these people are going to be able to appreciate each other and live with each other and fight against each other and do all sorts of different things. So yeah, the Lord of the Rings is hugely, like, stupid diverse. There's more diversity in the Lord of the Rings as the actual book series than in that whole, well, I guess I can't say with perfect certainty because I refuse to watch it, but in the Amazon Rings of Power series, it's like, okay, we've got a black dwarf. I mean, what more do you want out of the Lord of the Rings? Honestly, I mean, like, if you don't see the diversity in the Lord of the Rings, then you're blind, like willfully blind. And of course, that's the problem with woke philosophy. It's willfully blind in a bunch of different areas. They say, we need diversity, right? Well, and if you don't see the diversity that you specifically want, then of course, well, it's not diverse enough. I actually see this in higher education. I remember speaking with one of my professors when I was at university. And by the way, this guy was a self-described atheist liberal progressive. And he noted that when committees are gathered, right, that there's this real push, like, oh my goodness, we got to make sure we got enough women on this committee, right, and we got to make sure there's a black person, and an Asian person, and someone, of Latino. Excuse me, we've got to find a Latinx person, and then somebody who's LGBTQIA plus. I think I got it. And then when we get this range of people who have different skin colors or eye shapes or sexual orientations, yeah, then we can get together and rubber stamp whatever the liberal progressive ideology tells us to think. It's not real diversity. You just have a bunch of people who look different and think exactly the same way. Tolkien is so much more diverse. Stop saying that Lord of the Rings isn't diverse. The Lord of the Rings is flipping diverse. Tolkien created a world that is diverse in a more real way than woke culture can achieve by shoehorning inclusivity into our lives. Lord of the Rings is very diverse. So there's my rant for the day. There's my comeback after my month hiatus from YouTube to again talk. I can't get away from talking about Lord of the Rings. How do you stop talking about Lord of the Rings? But there we are. So stay tuned in the future if you want to hear about women in ancient Greece. Until then, if you want other things to watch, I don't know, you're probably going to scroll away from this if you haven't already. But watch my thing about Harry Potter and the Second Amendment and gun rights. I want more people to actually comment about that because I'm fascinated by Harry Potter, and I'm also fascinated by guns. So enjoy that. With that said, I'll leave my dining room now and actually get out of my monkey suit and get ready for office hours. And I wish everybody here joy in your lives, and I'll see you again soon.